The Atlanta Braves won the first two games of their series against the Mets and then lost the next two, looking pretty rough in the process. Let's talk about it on a special live edition of Braves Today. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Friday, June 27th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. Over there, obviously, tons of great ways to get everything. It's today's three things. We write that after every single Braves game. It's the daily deep dives during the week, the Saturday news roundup, and all of that. Again, bravestoday.com, free or paid. Those subscriptions help out the show a ton. All right, so I want to get to a lot of stuff today, right? We have updates on the All-Star voting, Atlanta's rotation plans for the upcoming series and for next week. Didier Fuentes looks like he will be in the rotation. I don't want to spend too much time in this live show breaking down what happened yesterday, right? Because I want this show to be answering your questions and having great discussion with those of you here live on YouTube. As we do, I'll do my best for my audio friends to make sure I read all these questions out loud so that you guys, since you can't see the comments here, because we do get a significant portion of our viewership, listenership, whatever, via audio. But to me, the biggest takeaway from this Braves-Mets series is it's kind of what Alex Anthopoulos talked about last week. This offense is not giving the pitching staff any margin for error. And when you don't get great performances out of your rotation, it feels like it's almost impossible for this Braves team to win. And last night was kind of a microcosm of this. You have 3 hits. The third one comes with 2 outs in the 9th inning when you're down 4-0. And Atlanta doesn't even draw a walk in the game. Literally had 3 base runners. Eli White gets on first, advances to second. Marcell Ozuna advances to second on an error. I actually think I got that wrong in last night's 3 things. I said White was the only one to get to second base. Ozuna did as well. But just a terribly deflating performance from Atlanta's offense. And first, I would say probably the first time we've seen Atlanta be early season anemic offense with Ronald Acuna Jr. in the lineup, right? He's been obviously one of the best players in baseball ever since he returned in late May. And this was the offense has not been good for a lot of the month, but it was despite what he did and despite what Matt Olson did. And last night was the first time we really saw the offense be bad, even with Ronald in the lineup. I don't really have any massive takeaways in that respect. This team has just been bad in the month of June. I went in there and pulled everybody's performance for the month. And, WRC plus, weighted runs created plus, 100 is average, right? Like 100 is league average. 3 Braves players in the month of June have been above average. Ronald's at a 212 WRC plus, which makes sense. He's batting 370 with an 1130 OPS. It makes sense he's that high. Matt Olson is at 167 WRC plus. That is thanks to a 305 average and a 961 OPS. He's been absurd in the month. Drake Baldwin's at a 120 WRC plus, and that's despite a 216 average. Everybody else has been varying levels of below average to bad. Austin Riley, an 83. We're going to get to Riley in a second because I do think that everybody complains about Michael Harris. And I do think we are kind of glossing over Riley's struggles. We'll get to that in a few minutes. Nick Allen, a 56 WRC plus. Marcell Ozuna, a 53 WRC plus. Marcell Ozuna's slash line in the month of June, if you're ready for this, 180, 265, 292. He has legitimately been terrible in the month of June. And he says that he's feeling better after the hip. He had a run to second base on that error where he looked like he was running pretty well. He's just in a massive slump. And then everybody else is even worse than that. Ozzie Albies batting 188 with a 518 OPS. It's a 48 WRC plus. Sean Murphy's batting 184 with a 477 OPS. It's a 29 WRC plus. Michael Harris batting 153 with a 441 OPS. It's a 15 WRC plus. And so with Jurickson Profar set to return early next week, right? Barring any sort of rainouts or anything, because his suspension is number of games. It's not number of days. So the first game he's eligible to come back, I believe, is July 2nd. So if you have a rainout, that pushes it back a day. But when Jurickson Profar comes back, and I want to get your opinion on this, I really want to know how aggressively Atlanta should shake things up. Because I'm at the point now, and there's a couple comments here in the chat about like, Ozuna's been bad for the past few weeks. Yeah, he absolutely has. A lot of these players have been bad for multiple weeks or the entirety of the season. And you're at the point where, like, I know Snit's been saying it's eventually going to turn around. And Matt Olson turned around. Some of that was he was having bad batted ball luck early in the year. Drake Baldwin was having bad batted ball luck early in the year. That turned, and he's been one of the better hitters for Atlanta all year. But we've seen it happen for two guys. Like, that's it. Everybody started off cold, and we've seen two guys eventually come around on the numbers. We've seen Matt Olson come around. We've seen Drake Baldwin come around. That's about really it. Austin Riley's numbers overall aren't bad. But we're at the point where you got to be aggressive here. You got to shake something up. And you get Jurickson Profar back. He's hitting pretty well in Gwinnett, with the caveat of, yes, it's AAA. But in his 9 games, he's 11 for 35, 1 double, 2 homers in his 11 hits. So it's he has 6 walks and 4 strikeouts. So a 314 average with a 395 on base and a 514 slug. I am at the point right now, it feels like nobody should be safe. Now, there are some positions you're not going to make moves, right? You're not going to make a move at first base. You're not going to make a move in right field. But you are at the point where nobody should be safe right now. And so it's aggressive. It sounds very aggressive. But what I want to see Atlanta do is dramatically shake things up. That first game back with Jurickson Profar back, I want Jurickson Profar leading off in left field. I want Drake Baldwin as your DH batting second. Then I want Ronald. Then I want Matt Olson. Then I want start stacking everybody else. I want Austin Riley down there. Sean Murphy's going to catch while Drake Baldwin's DHing. I wouldn't mind running out somebody else at second base for a game or two. But in this scenario, I'm going to have Eli White playing center field. I think the roster moves that need to be made when Jurickson Profar comes back, to give Jurickson Profar a spot, he takes Alex Verdugo's role. Alex Verdugo should be launched into the sun. Alex Verdugo is not giving you anything on this team. Do you remember when Nick Allen took over the shortstop job? We would go entire weeks and Orlando Arcia would never see the field because he wasn't a good base runner. He wasn't a good hitter. And you had a better defensive option than him. And so Atlanta would not use Orlando Arcia at all. That's where Alex Verdugo is going to be when Jurickson Profar comes back. His defense isn't that much better than Profar's. He's not fast for a pinch runner. The only thing he would give you is a lefty veteran bat off the bench that probably would not strike out. Doesn't mean he'd hit the ball very hard or do anything with it, but you're in a situation where he's not going to do anything. And so there's no reason to have him here. I would option down Michael Harris to Gwinnett. And when I do that, I would ask him to just not even report for 3 or 4 days, right? Take a couple days, just decompress, get away from the game, rest, don't do anything physical, just kind of hang out and chill for a couple days, do something fun, and then show up and let's start working on the stuff on offense that we want, right? We would start doing that. And the goal is eventually get him back up here. But it's up to him. Tell him, hey, this is what we want to see. This is, here's what your chase rate is right now. Here's the last time you walked. You haven't walked in over a month, right? So here in Gwinnett, here are the metrics we're giving you. When you hit these 3 things, right? Give him a chase rate goal. Give him a walk goal. Give him a batting average goal or a production goal. And say, when you hit these goals, you're back up in Atlanta. It is entirely in your control. We will play you every day. We will lead you off. You decide when you come back to Atlanta. And in the meantime, play Eli White. Because listen, everybody said, well, I don't think Eli White's an upgrade on Michael Harris. He can't be worse than Michael Harris right now. Eli White is faster than Michael Harris. His arm is almost as good. It feels like he can play defense at 90% of the level or 95% of the level of Michael Harris. It's not like he could hit harder or hit worse than Michael. Michael has a lower OPS on the season than Nick Allen does. And Nick Allen doesn't have a single homer on the year and has like two barrels. And Michael's OPS is lower than Nick Allen's. Again, in the month of June, Michael Harris has hit 153 with a 170 on base. His on base is less than his weight. It's a 271 slug. I mean, Nick Allen's a 254 slug in that same stretch, and Nick Allen has virtually zero power to speak of. Put Eli White in there. And Dwayne made a great point in the chat, and this is something that I've been saying for a while. We saw this with Eddie Rosario. You have to snit-proof the lineup. If you leave Alex Verdugo in Atlanta when Profar comes back, he's going to use Alex Verdugo. He did it with Eddie Rosario. He's going to remember who this guy used to be and what he was capable of earlier in his career versus now. Question in the chat from Simasort, who's joining us from the Netherlands. Shout out. I love that. How has Michael fallen off so hard? Is it because of his chase percentage? Almost essentially, yes, it is. And I haven't pulled the numbers in a couple days, but last time I looked at this, Michael's chase rate was like 40%. It was one of the worst in all of baseball. When he swung at pitches in the strike zone, he's hitting almost 300. Like, his production is fantastic for balls in the strike zone. He's just not swinging enough at strikes, and he's swinging too much at balls. And you're at the point now, I honestly would not be throwing him a single strike. It does not make sense to me. I would not throw Michael Harris a single strike right now because he does not want to walk. He does not want to take a walk. I've got a couple of your questions starred. We're going to get to those in just a second. But first, I want to talk about the rotation plans, the All-Star voting. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. I want to talk about the All-Star voting. I know a lot of you guys have expressed frustration. I also am frustrated with how some of the voting went. But before that, real quick, Matt has a question in the chat. I don't understand the snit proof thing. Does AA and SNIT not communicate about this? Does AA not have input or suggest when to play White? Seems like an odd dynamic between the two. This is something From what I understand, and we've never been overtly told this, but generally in baseball, how this works is there's two different kinds of front office to dugout collaborations. There's the setup with certain teams, especially with younger managers, where um, the front office, in essence, dictates what's going to happen, right? A younger, newer manager, an analytically inclined front office, the front office dictates what's going to happen. They make the lineups, they set the rotation, they do all that stuff. They give you a written plan on which relievers to use when, et cetera, et cetera. Atlanta, with a veteran manager, is a little bit different, where these resources are provided to Snit and crew, but Snit's making the lineup. And I'm sure that there's a suggested lineup that they give him based on handedness and matchups and all of that. And he seems pretty adept at understanding some of those things. Hey, Verdugo's been really good against this guy in his career, so I'm going to stick him in the lineup and bat him second. We all criticize it. Verdugo gets 2 or 3 hits off the guy. But this is typically something where, as I understand, Snit has the deference of, hey, you're a baseball lifer. You've been doing this for an incredibly long time. We're not micromanaging every decision you make in the dugout. Whereas there are some clubs where that happens, where the front office is actively involved in everything. So, yeah, that is part of it. And that's what when I say Snit proof the lineup, I mean, don't give him the temptation of having Verdugo to send out for a pinch hit or for a start. Just take him out of the lineup, take him off the roster completely. He can't do that. It's what they did with Eddie Rosario, right? Snit used him in a surprisingly bad place because he had a feeling. And so they just took him off completely. Okay. The All-Star voting. Phase 2 voting opens on Monday and runs through Wednesday. And the only Braves player who is in the second round of voting is Ronald Acuna Jr. And I had all of the numbers here real quick. But it's a little frustrating for me simply because it feels like Matt Olson deserved to be in there, and he didn't get it. But Ronald has 1.8 million votes. He's the third highest National League vote getter, behind Pete Crow Armstrong of the Cubs, who deserves it, and Teoscar Hernandez of the Dodgers, who I really don't think kind of does. James Wood of the Nationals deserved it much more, and he's ninth. Kyle Tucker of the Cubs is at fourth. Andy Pages of the Dodgers, who's been really good recently, but probably overvoted in here because it's a Dodgers guy, is fifth, and Juan Soto was sixth. So if Ronald finishes in the top 3, he will be a starter in the All-Star game. Again, voting opens Monday and runs through, I think it said Thursday or Wednesday. So that's good. But the Freddie Freeman thing, the Matt Olson thing, he's in 5th place and not moving on to the second round, despite having more WAR than any first baseman in the National League. A little bit frustrating there. Freddie Freeman's at 1, 3.4 million votes. Pete Alonso's at 2, 2.2 million votes. Matt Olson had 408,000. And I know that Olson started off slow. Every Brave started off slow. And on a lot of these vote tallies, there's a Braves guy in the top 10, but none of them were good enough to get into the next round other than Ronald. Sean Murphy was 9th, 305,000 votes. Ozzie Albies was 7th, which is the biggest surprising thing there. 496,000 votes. Austin Riley was 6th. Nick Allen was 7th. Marcell Ozuna was 6th. So, yeah. Reminder that we don't vote on pitchers. Pitchers are selected by the coaching staff and by the players. And Matt made a great point here. Braves fans weren't going to reward these players other than Ronnie for the season that they're having. I mean, you're absolutely right. We saw in 2023 when everything was going well, you had your entire starting infield in the All-Star game at the same time. Multiple pitchers and things like that. And you could still see a pitcher, still see a Swellenbach or somebody else in there. But it's Ronald's the only option as of right now. And obviously, it would be nice for him to get in there. I saw the stat this morning. If he gets voted in this time, he will tie, I believe it was Dale Murphy and Hank Aaron for the most fan selections in the All-Star game or some sort of stat like that. Kind of like a historic thing here. And in the future, you'd hope we have more options in there. Obviously, Michael Harris wasn't in the top 20 for the outfielders. You'd like to think with, if he was back to his original season form, he would be there. I also am starting to wonder if he's ever going to get there. I don't know if people have, everybody's pointed this out or not yet, but his numbers in almost every respect have regressed every single season since he started. Okay. If you look at OPS plus, it's a great way to just kind of condense everything down. 2022, 135 OPS plus. He is rookie of the year, 13th place in MVP. 2023, 116 OPS plus. Last year, 98 OPS plus. Shorter season. He has the hamstring injury and things like that. Gets hot after he comes back. This year, 56 OPS plus. So, not been great. And Brogelsby makes a great point in the chat, he usually does, that there's players that have made this profile work. Jackson Merrill also has a terrible chase rate. Michael reminds me a lot of a guy like Javi Baez, who very good hitter early in his career, making a ton of contact. As the book gets out and as his chase rate and his walk rates get worse and worse, he starts to really struggle at the plate. And now Javi Baez is a finalist in the American League for All-Star voting at outfield after moving to center field and hitting over 300. Like, there's absolutely a way for Michael Harris to rebound. And it doesn't require that much change in what he's doing as far as chase. I would like to see it come down. It needs to come down. The bigger issue for me is he's not swinging enough at pitches in the zone. Like, part of the reason he was so successful, even with a high chase rate in his career, because he's never been good at chase. He's never been fantastic at that. But one of the reasons he's made it work is his swings in the zone he's always been aggressive in the zone. But that's dropped from 50-something% down into the 40%. And at this point, it's fixable, right? Like, there's a path. You can see, we've talked about this. We've seen other guys with this similar profile in baseball be successful. When you look at identical guys or guys with a similar profile as far as chase and all of that, you see guys who chase a lot and have been somewhat. Pete Crow Armstrong is a first percentile chaser. He's technically worse than Michael Harris. And yet he is one of the best hitters in baseball. Like, you can be successful with this. You just have to nail everything else. And he's not nailing everything else. All right. Real quick, before we get into your questions, I think I've started 8 or 9 of these already. I've started a bunch of these questions, so thank you for these real quick. And shout out to you, Simasort, for calling it on the Javi Baez thing. I've been mulling that comparison through in my head the last probably week or so and thinking about writing this up in a longer form newsletter about what Javi Baez did this year to be successful and get back to being productive, and if that applies to Michael Harris or not. Little insight into the process. I've been thinking about this for a little while. And to clarify, and shout out to Jesse for agreeing with me, quote, I really don't think Atlanta should give up on Harris. If his pitch selection can improve, he'll be the player people expect. I agree, AAA may be the place to fix it. Yeah, I'm absolutely not saying give up on Michael Harris. And there's people who are saying trade him. No, you've seen what he can do when he's good. He can bat 300 and threaten 2020 seasons. It's just, like, one, you're selling at the absolute lowest possible return right now. But yeah, maybe he needs to go to AAA and figure it out. He does not have enough service time to reject an assignment to AAA. So you can send him even if he doesn't want to go. Once a guy hits 5 years of service time, he can refuse your assignment to the minors, and he can and just stay in the majors. Like, he doesn't have to go. but Michael doesn't have enough service time to do that. So now's the time to send him, because if you wait 2 more seasons, you can't send him unless he's okay with it. Let's get to the rotation real quick, because despite me arguing this yesterday in the show, Ryan Snitker said that they're probably going to give Didier Fuentes another start. And I get it when you think about he would line up to face the Angels next week. The Angels are a better team from a record perspective than Atlanta is right now. That's the hard thing to think to internalize about this season, is there's a lot of teams in the standings are better than Atlanta. The only teams in baseball with a worse record than Atlanta right now: Miami Marlins, Washington Nationals, Pittsburgh Pirates, Colorado Rockies, Baltimore Orioles, Oakland A's, Chicago White Sox. The Kansas City Royals have not won a home game in the month of June, and they have a better record than Atlanta does. It's a little sobering when you hear it like that. Atlanta is 2.5 games ahead of Miami in the wildcard standings. Sobering to hear it like that, right? We have a question about Miami and a possible trade coming up in the third segment, so don't let me forget. He's not in here, but he sent me the question early, so I said I'd get to it. But so for the rotation, this weekend, I guess tonight technically, Bryce Elder versus Mick Abel for the Phillies series. Jesus Luzardo versus Spencer Schwellenbach on Saturday. Heads up, that is a Fox game, not a Bally game. And then Sunday, Ranger Suarez, Spencer Strider. So Atlanta faces 2 lefties in Luzardo and Suarez. And honestly, as much as Atlanta's struggled with Suarez and Luzardo and has hit Zach Wheeler well, it's kind of frustrating that you don't get Wheeler, you get Suarez instead. But then projecting forward, that means against LA next week, against the Angels, you get Fuentes on Tuesday, Holmes on Wednesday, and Elder on Thursday. I talked about this in the newsletter. I talked about this on the show. I think it was yesterday, actually. You don't have a ton of other options to start. And so the raw stuff is there for Fuentes. It would be nice to go ahead and use him and get a good start out of him. Could you manipulate the rotation to not need a 5th starter more than once between now and the All-Star break? If you're willing to throw a bullpen game in the final series against St. Louis, you can do that. But if you are going to give him 2 starts, the Angels and the Orioles are not bad teams to do it against. And there's not a ton of options for other guys to face. I do like that Jackson Stevens, who I've always liked, I've met him, he's a super nice guy. I do like that he's potentially becoming an option. Shout out to Victor here in the chat who had the question about Jesse Chavez or about Jackson Stevens. Could he be a Jesse Chavez type starter, a reliever, bulk guy kind of thing? He's now made 2 starts for Gwinnett. He started last night and he started on the 20th. Combined 9 innings, 1 hit, 3 walks to 12 strikeouts. So here's the thing, though. They've used him as a starter in the past. It's not just here. They used him some as a starter last year, too, and Atlanta did not bother to call him up. But it feels like he's now at the point where him or Nathan Wiles might be your best options. Maybe it's something you bring him up. It requires a 40-man move. You've got to add him. But maybe you bring him up and you piggyback Fuentes and Stevens. Together, ask them to get through a normal length start. Maybe you use Aaron Bummer as a bulk man with Fuentes and together get him through a normal length start. I talked about that yesterday. But end of the day, you don't have many other options. Snitz said we're probably going to use him. It's not up to him. He acknowledged he doesn't set the rotation. The front office does. But at this point, they're probably going to use him because they don't have any other options. All right. I've got, looks like 10 starred questions in here in the YouTube chat. Go ahead and drop them if you got them. We'll take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll get to your questions right here on Braves Today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Thank you to everybody who's here for the YouTube live chat. I really do enjoy these Friday live shows. It's been tons of fun. These have been great. The first question is actually came from somebody on YouTube yesterday, said he wasn't going to make it here for the live show. He went ahead and dropped me the question. Could the Atlanta Braves trade for Edward Cabrera from the Marlins? It's possible. The thing about that is the Braves and Marlins have barely done any business together over the last 2 decades. I went back and looked in the MLB Trade Rumors transaction database available to subscribers. The Braves and Marlins have made one trade this decade, and it's when Alex Anthopoulos called Kim Ng, the old general manager, who's now working with that new softball league, to get Adam Duvall for catcher Alex Jackson in 2021. That's the only deal that they've made in this decade. There were 2 trades in 2010. One of those was Jeff Francoeur. There was the 2002 trade for Dan Uggla. And I believe that's it. Like 4 deals in the last 23 years between these teams. Obviously, new management with everybody. Peter Bendix has been more willing to make deals as the new GM of the Marlins since he came over from Tampa Bay. But it just feels a lot of front offices nowadays in the era of social media and everything have become more cognizant about what it's going to look like if you trade a player inside the division and then they beat you. You see them a lot over and over and over again. It ends up not going over well. So that's just, it's possible, but I doubt they go get Edward Cabrera. It's also a profile Atlanta hasn't done a lot of stuff with. He's a changeup, sinker, curveball guy. Atlanta throws a lot of forcing fastballs and cutters for their fastballs. Their preferred breaking pitch is a slider. He does throw a slider. He does have a forcing fastball, but it just feels like it's a profile that there's 2 ways to think about this. One is they're not super experienced at making guys like him better. The other way to think about it is the things he does good at are the things that Atlanta's not great with, and they can improve the areas with which he's the weakest. There's 2 ways to think about this, but it just feels like that's not a very likely move based on both the team and the team fit, as well as organizationally what Atlanta likes to see from their starters. He's also had some injury concerns, so there's that. Okay, some of the questions here. I've got one from Matt. See you every day in here. Love you, buddy. Thanks for being here. What grade would you give AA so far for the first half of the season? I know he may have had his hands tied by management in some regard, but regardless, he has greatly underdelivered so far. I do think we need to acknowledge, I'm glad you put it in there, acknowledge the caveat of he clearly has had his hands tied. That there was clearly some sort of mandate from up above about limiting payroll after the offseason started. Because everything that he told us, and again, I feel like I'm the only one who kind of clarifies this, but I have spoken to Alex Anthopoulos personally, like face to face. I've talked to him on Zooms, all that kind of stuff. I have never once felt like he was deliberately lying to me. I legitimately think that he intended on increasing payroll as he has every season and was told later he had to pull back. I would say I remember writing a piece the day after the season ended last year, talking about the number one question for Atlanta going into 2025 was starting pitching depth. And how just about everybody in your rotation had workload concerns and had some injury concerns. So to not have starting options technically just short of the midpoint of the year, still have a back end of the bullpen problem is frustrating. And I'm going to give AA a C minus because ultimately the rotation issues haven't yet come back to bite you as much as we thought it was going to. And to me, the biggest issue in the bullpen has not been not having Joe Jimenez or AJ Minter. It's been Raisel Iglesias being bad. And I don't hold that on AA. I don't hold the offense being so awful on Alex Anthopoulos. That's on the players. That's on Tim Hires. That's not on Alex Anthopoulos for them being bad. Now, there's a different conversation about the contracts he gave out to those guys, but that's not from this offseason. There's also no way that he would have known that Profar was going to get popped for performance-enhancing drugs. Nobody in baseball knew. He would not have gotten signed by anybody had they known. So I'm going to give AA a C, C minus. He didn't meaningfully reinforce the rotation at all. He tried supposedly, but we didn't. We ended up not having enough, and health was a bigger issue for us this year than it was last year. But we also don't have the depth to make up for it. So I'm going to give him a C minus there. I haven't given a grade to the offense, but it's honestly probably a D. There's not many redeemable qualities about this offense right now. Simasort from the Netherlands here. Hey, Lindsay, in the Netherlands, we say that the way to become champion is to be consistent. Atlanta seems to drop a lot of games to small teams. Would you agree they are just not championship worthy? This does not feel like a championship winning roster. No. This does not feel like a playoff roster. And the thing that stands out to me, I talked about this, I think maybe 2 weeks ago, is when you go back and you look at the postseason teams, almost every single postseason team wins the games they're supposed to against the bad teams. And then they at least hold their own against the good teams. And by that, I mean, if you look at their overall record against teams over 500, they are close to 500 or better, right? You go last year, all three teams that won their divisions in the National League and all three wildcard teams, including Atlanta, had a winning record against teams over 500. In the American League, two of the three division winners, the Astros were the only ones that didn't at 41 and 43, but two of the three had a winning record against teams over 500. And in the American League wild card, the Orioles did, and the Royals and Tigers didn't, but they beat up on the White Sox all year. So that's how they got in. You look at this year, not only does Atlanta have a losing record overall, but against teams who are 500 or better, Atlanta's 21 and 30. They're 9 games below 500. If they were to be in the postseason, it would be one of the worst marks against winning teams in this decade if they were to make the postseason. And so to me, that tells me even if they get in the postseason, they're not likely to win very many games. I personally don't believe if this team even does make the postseason, I personally don't think they'll go very far. And so there's a very small part of me, the content creator part of me, right, who's always thinking about what can I talk about? What can I explain to you guys? What can I break down for you guys? Small part of me is thinking if they just lose 10 straight, we could go to the trade deadline and start talking about trades and how to make the team better. Obviously, I'm a Braves fan first and foremost. I've grown up watching the Braves now for 40 years, and I want to see them do well. So I want the Braves to win because it's just more fun to talk about a win than a loss. But I personally, even if they rebound to make the postseason, I don't think they'll go very far. They just don't really seem to have the good enough hitting and the good enough performances against good teams to do it. Another question from Matt. Good one here. Tough one to answer. Why do we not get up on getaway days? I feel it's deeper than the hitters just don't show up. It's like a mentality. Something's off in the clubhouse, like they just want to get on the plane. I think this one's tough because I do think your schedule is a lot different when you play a day game versus a night game. Atlanta's been bad at getaway days in general, but it feels like they've especially been bad at day getaway day games, right? They play in the afternoon. Some of that may be due to the schedule being different. Maybe they're just not able to get their work in. Maybe they're not able to, they don't feel properly ready for the game. But either way, I don't honestly know exactly why, but it is very frustrating. It is very frustrating to me. That feels like we've seen so many times they might win the first 2 and they lose 3, or they've tied the first 2 and they could take a series and they lose the series instead. I honestly don't know what it is. Some of it, there's a small part of me that wonders, is it the different angles and lighting and shadows and all of that? If you're struggling to hit and you've got shadows between you and the pitcher, does that make it worse? I don't know. But it doesn't make a lot of sense. I personally hate it. Not a big fan of it. All right, Dustin's at work, but wanted to get his question in. Do you think the Braves can afford to wait until the trade deadline to make any moves? Seems like it may be too late if they don't act now. It feels like they're going to wait. I want them to go and get a starting pitcher. I've talked about this, right? And get an Andrew Heaney, get a Charlie Morton, do something. The Orioles have been better recently. I want to say they've been better in the month of June. They're still 7 games back in the wild card, and they're actually worse from a record perspective than Braves are, but they've been playing well recently. So it feels like Morton might not be an option. I do think they're going to treat getting Jurickson Profar like a trade acquisition. Mentally, I think they're going to say this is a trade acquisition for us. So we don't necessarily have to go out and get somebody right now. I do think they need to get pitching. I do think they need to make a move for pitching. I like the idea of David Bednar has an additional year of team control, so you can get him, and he does help next year's roster as well. I don't think there's a starter that would be available with multiple years of team control without paying an exorbitant amount. But I do think they need to make a move. It probably needs to be a starter because I think every other position right now, there is another option you can try. You can let Eli White play every day in center field. He was better earlier in the year when he was playing every day. You can stick Profar in left. You can rotate somebody in at second, right? Whether it's Luke Williams or somebody else. They just haven't done any of that. So I do think they should make a deal. I do think if they make a deal, though, it's probably going to end up being for a starter versus being for a hitter, because where do you put that hitter unless like you put Ozuna on the IL or something? From Dwayne, does the pitch recognition on Harris's part in the hitting philosophy change? It sounds like, or I think you're asking about the change in philosophy with Tim Hires, where they're trying to take more pitches and work counts. Has that done something to his pitch recognition? The pitch recognition's never been great for Michael Harris. This is a swing decision thing. I absolutely do think the swing decisions are impacted by the hitting philosophy change. I do think that he's trying to be more patient at the plate. Earlier in the year, his first strike swing percentage was way down. He was trying to be more patient, and then he gets behind in counts, and he starts swinging at everything. And he's seen very few 3-ball counts because he gets behind so early. And it's a fine line to walk, right? If people know you're going to swing at every first pitch, they're going to start throwing you out of the zone on every first pitch. But for the longest time, he was trying to work a count and take pitches, and that's not his game. His strength is not, that's a ball I'm not going to swing. That's not what he does. His strength is, that pitch looks to be in the zone, I'm going to fire off and crush it. That's his strength. And the hitting philosophy change did mess with his swing decisions in a bad way. He had started to adjust back. He was being more aggressive early in the count. He was giving longer swings, harder swings, back to his A swing more often. And we saw the numbers take a brief little dead cat bounce in like earlier mid-May. And now he's been on that slump again. So I don't know how you fix Michael Harris. I kind of agree with everybody else. It needs to be in AAA. Speaking of that, Mike Carroll, should the batting coach be blamed for a whole team slump? I do think he has a small part of it, but this is on the players. And I think the players would say that too. Hitting in baseball, I think the biggest thing that kind of tells me this is on the players is so many players across the league have had private hitting coaches and still use those private hitting coaches, even though they have a team hitting coach. Hitting in baseball is incredibly hard. And in retrospect, it wasn't a great idea to try to retool everybody's approach in the same season. This is like, in retrospect, this was a little bit avoidable if Atlanta had been a little more willing to not make as egregious of changes. And to AA's credit, the guys he acquired to stick into the lineup, Profar is a high contact bat, Nick Allen, Verdugo, higher contact guys. Even Drake Baldwin was known for his contact and his power. Those are all guys that fit with the Hires philosophy and would have blended well with the veterans, were the veterans still doing the things that they did in 23 and to an extent last year, minus the injuries. So Hires gets a little bit of blame, but a lot of this is on the team. And I think they'd say that too. I don't know how you undo what Hires has done at this point. Do you just tell guys to go back to whatever they were doing and just ignore what Tim Hires was trying to teach. I don't know what the strategy is here, but there you go. Another question from Dwayne. Does Snitker's minor league play them because you're developing them style work analytically in the majors? Yes and no. There's no better way to get information about what a player is good or bad at than having them try to do it in the majors. I was very outspoken last year about that last month of the season. They needed to get data. They needed to find out, like with the injuries, what could Nacho Alvarez do? What could some of these other guys do in the majors? Because then you find out this is what they have to work on. This is how the league's going to attack them. With Drake Baldwin, I said, hey, best case scenario, he hits well and he sticks. Worst case scenario, you get 3 weeks of info about how major league pitchers are going to attack him and where he needs to work so he can go back to the minors and work on it. I do think that there is some valuable lessons you can learn. The issue you have is this offense, this pitching staff, the team standings. None of it's at the point where you can afford to give away too many at-bats or innings on the mound for development reasons, right? And this is something that the Braves have always struggled with, right? Like they haven't had the runway to let a prospect learn on the job because they've been a World Series contender. They've been trying to win the division. They've been a good team. It's a lot easier if you're the Marlins to stick 7 youngsters in your lineup every day. And if they're bad, who cares? You were going to be bad anyway. It's harder for the Braves to do that. So it is a valuable way to get info, but it's also a tricky line to manage simply because you can't afford to drop games in the standings because you're letting a 20-year-old make his 3rd career start, right? Your offense isn't good enough to pick you up if that 20-year-old gives up 5 runs in his first 3 or 4 innings. I'm not trying to pick on Didier Fuentes. He's just the most obvious example here, right? Like even last year when Schwellenbach came up, he wasn't good early, but you had a good enough record and hitters in the lineup still because of injuries where you could cover for him until he got good. You don't have that this year. That's part of the reason yesterday I argued he needed to be going back to the minors and you have somebody else start. And on that note, Baldwin needs to get the vast majority of games at catcher. If you're only playing one catcher, I agree. Baldwin's bat is too important to take out of the lineup right now. If your DH spot is open, Marcell Ozuna is on the IL, then Baldwin should be the DH and Murphy should be behind the plate because Murphy's game calling is second to none. I think he's one of the best game callers in baseball. I've always thought that part of the reason Atlanta got him. If you remember the whole thing of they traded William Contreras for Sean Murphy, there were Braves pitchers who did not want to throw to William Contreras because he was not good at calling games. He was not good defensively. He was a bat that struggled behind the plate. Part of the reason they got Murphy was an exceptional defender, and Atlanta's willing to sacrifice some offense for defense in the premium positions at catcher, at shortstop, and they thought they weren't doing it in center field. That's now changed. So if you just have one catcher in the game, I definitely need it to be Murphy. If you have 2 catchers in the game, if you have 1 catcher in the game, Baldwin's bat needs to be there. If you have 2 catchers in the game, Murphy's behind the plate, Baldwin's DHing. Speaking of Baldwin, do I think he'll get Rookie of the Year? That's from Cap Mania, and Broglesby has the same answer that I do. He's not winning Rookie of the Year with Jacob Misiorowski of the Brewers up. As soon as Jacob Misiorowski debuted, the Vegas lines, I have a sportsbook guy. He runs a sportsbook. He sends me stuff as I need it. He sent me an email and he said, hey, now that Misiorowski's up, we've officially changed our Rookie of the Year odds and Misiorowski's best odds for Rookie of the Year. If Misiorowski keeps on doing what he does, he outdueled Paul Skeens earlier this week. If he keeps doing what he does, he will win Rookie of the Year. If Misiorowski stumbles or gets sent back down or misses time or whatever, what Drake Baldwin's doing will probably win him Rookie of the Year, provided he does not get hurt and miss any more time or continue to slump like he has a little bit in the month of June. His average has come down from over 300. He's slumped just a little bit. So Baldwin can get Rookie of the Year, but Misiorowski needs to cut it out if we want to do that. Final question here on the live show before we get out of here. Ozuna, Iglesias, Verdugo, and maybe Ozzy are really the only major league players that Atlanta would be willing to move, right? What return value would they generate? And that's from Jesse. I don't think you're going to get a ton out of really any of them. Ozuna has, if he could get to hitting again between now and the deadline, he'll get you something. He'll get you an actual prospect, right? Verdugo, I don't think anybody gives you anything for him. We're talking about DFA and Verdugo for nothing. I think at most, if somebody wanted him, they would consider offering you cash considerations for him after you DFA him. But I honestly think he's probably a veteran sign for a team like the White Sox or the Rockies after he gets DFA'd. Iglesias, he has looked better recently. Maybe he gets you something. I don't think he gets you any sort of rated prospect, right? Or maybe if you do get a rated prospect, it's like you're number 28 in the system or something like that. I don't think he gets you anything valuable. Ozzy is the real question mark because he has been bad and he's not been good for multiple years. But if there's a team that thinks if we give him one more year away from the injury, the broken wrist, we have $7 million club options on him for the next 2 seasons. And his defense is not good, no. But if we think his offense can pick back up, it's really a pittance to pay, especially when you consider his buyout's $4 million. So you're choosing to spend $3 million more for the possibility of getting the old Ozzy Albies back. But at the same time, you're having to pay the rest of his salary and $4 million for next year if you don't think he's going to work out. So you would get the biggest return would be Ozuna, followed by Iglesias, maybe Ozzy then if they're willing to move him and a team believes in him. Honestly, I haven't seen anything in the stats that tells me you would believe in him. That's a lot of blue in that Statcast card. And then Verdugo, at best, you would get cash considerations, but I don't think you'll get anything from Alex Verdugo. So, one more last minute question from Cat Mania. Do you think letting go of Arcia was a good idea? Orlando Arcia wasn't doing anything for you. I mean, we talked about it. He wasn't even playing. I think the only time he got into a game in the final month he was in Atlanta was he pinch ran for Marcell Ozuna, which we laughed about at the time till we found out Ozuna was still playing hurt. But other than that, he doesn't do anything else for you. He didn't do anything for you. There's no point in keeping him on the roster in that situation. Let him go somewhere else where he can play. I'm glad Braves fans cheered him a little bit when he came back as a member of Colorado. This has been Braves Today for Friday, June 27th. Thank you guys so much for being here for this live show. I've had a ton of fun. There at one point, there was like 80 something of y'all in here. I really do appreciate that a lot. Do me a favor. If you're listening on audio, Apple, Spotify, YouTube Music, if you want to leave a 5-star review, that'd be great. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when we drop our daily episodes. I drop shorts in here and when we go live next Friday so we can get to your questions. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.